Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. We're back here today as we embark on a busy month of November. Can you believe it, folks? Purdue football continues to impress, now fresh off another top 5 win that has earned them bowl eligibility already. The earliest they've been bowl eligible in a while. Purdue basketball gets ready to tip off in one of the most anticipated seasons in program history. We'll take a look back at the field-storming victory over Michigan State, talk a little bit about Purdue's trip to Ohio State, and take a quick look at the 2 basketball games this week before we answer some of your questions on the way out. So, it's a busy show today, no doubt. But first, give the show a follow on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Always tweeting stuff there. Have a big week of events that you'll want to be following along for. Subscribe to the show. We're not going anywhere. It's going to be a long winter. It's going to be a cold winter, but we're going to be here every week talking about Purdue sports and help spread the word. Spread this show to some fellow Boilermakers. Right now is a great, exciting time to be a Purdue fan. Let's grow this audience and let's have some fun together. Now, bowl-bound Boilermakers after a 40-29 win over Michigan State. This is Purdue's first time being bowl eligible since 2018. And what really stands out about this is that this is the first year since 2007 that Purdue will already be bowl eligible going into the Old Oaken Bucket game. In 2011, 2012, 2017, and 2018, Purdue reached their bowl eligibility in all 4 of those seasons with wins over Indiana. This year, they're bowl eligible before that. Last time was 2007. They started 7-2 before losing their last 3. Ended up getting a dramatic win up in the Motor City Bowl that year. On this one Saturday, though, Purdue never trailed. They scored first. Michigan State tied it up a few times, but for the most part, you felt that Purdue was in control for most of the game. And that's something that I don't know that you thought going in. I think everyone certainly knew that, Purdue had a far better chance than you normally assume when you see an unranked team playing at number 3 team. I think, we're to the point where Purdue may deserve to be ranked. I don't think anyone necessarily bought into Michigan State being the 3rd best team in the country, though they certainly probably are, in that top 15 range. Going in, though, no need to summarize. If you haven't seen this win yet, you're probably not listening to the podcast today. So, a few takeaways. O'Connell's game was one of the best I've ever seen from a Purdue quarterback. Aiden O'Connell, 40 for 54, 536 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is unbelievable stuff. That is an incredible stat line. I know Michigan State's pass defense isn't good. You heard last week on the show, Ryan Collins, our guest from Michigan State, was great to see him this weekend, but he brought up that soft zone that Michigan State plays. It's soft, all right. My goodness. I mean, everything underneath was wide open all day, and plenty of stuff even opened up over the top down the sidelines. I mean, Michigan State's pass defense wasn't great, but O'Connell took advantage. Purdue's receivers had a good day. O'Connell just delivered big throw after big throw, hit some downfield balls that really helped Purdue. Had some nice balls to David Bell, a couple of real deep ones there. Threw a nice dart down the middle to Garrett Miller, I remember. He was excellent. And the ability to throw the ball downfield is just massive that O'Connell brings. A second time in the last month winning the national Davey O'Brien Quarterback of the Week award. He's turning into a really, really strong quarterback for Purdue. pretty impressive stuff. You don't want to jump to conclusions because he's certainly had rough games. That Wisconsin game was bad, but the move to go to O'Connell was the absolute right decision to make. O'Connell has proved it here 3 of the last 4 weeks. And of course, David Bell. What can you say about him at this point? 11 catches for 217 yards. It's not normal to have 2 games with over 200 yards receiving in the same month. But Michigan State kind of had the same problem that Iowa did. If you're going to single cover them, you're going to get cooked. And when they dropped into a zone, their safety wasn't breaking towards Bell. He was playing so soft and deep that Bell was able to get into that hole above the corner and beneath the safety for a completion almost every time. It didn't make sense. I don't know why Mel Tucker, a good defensive mind, came in with that mindset, but, Bell is incredible. You're going to see David Bell one more time in Ross-Ade Stadium. That is a foregone conclusion at this point, in my opinion. He is a legitimate NFL receiver. He is not, some guy who's going to go blow you away with his 40 time. He's not that. But his route running, his hands, his attention to detail, he is an elite receiver. He is, I know there was some debate on this on Twitter. I think David Bell is the best receiver in Purdue history. We've talked about my only good prediction from before the season is that Bell's going to break the all-time Purdue receiving record for a single season. If he played that Illinois game, I think we'd be certainly looking at that. Right now, needs about 300 more yards over the rest of the season. Now it looks like he'll have 3 more games and a bowl. So that's looking good. But we're really watching a true Purdue football legend at this point. And, when Purdue got him out of Warren Central, everyone knew he would be good. I don't think anyone expected him to come in and be the best receiver Purdue football's ever seen, and that's what we are watching unfold in front of us. I was very impressed, though, with some other receivers for Purdue. I thought Milton Wright was excellent. He had a few really big catches in this game. I think he only had 4, but they were all at key times, it felt like. I know he had 2 on the first series in that touchdown drive. He was very good, and on that trick play, the Jackson Anthrop play that we'll talk about in a little bit, you saw him busting his butt getting down the field to deliver a huge block. I mean, he ran 45 yards as Anthrop was cutting it back to deliver a block. That's impressive stuff. Garrett Miller, this was the best day of his career, in my opinion. Clearly, statistically, it shows that he got far more snaps than he's ever received. Payne Durham played. I think he played all of 2 snaps. He came in as a decoy a couple times, but Miller delivered 8 catches for 74 yards. I was hard on him early on this season. Thought his blocking was a little bit poor. He's bounced back. He's had a very nice year. Late in the first half, he had a very nice catch over the middle that I liked a lot on the drive that ended the first half. Purdue did nothing with that drive, but thought Miller had a great catch there. Everyone remembers his toe tap on the sidelines in the third quarter. That was big. All in all, very good day. Replacing a guy like Payne Durham is tough, but Miller did a very, very strong job. Excellent day for him. As a whole, the run game didn't do much. You're getting a couple yards a carry for the running backs, a couple sacks for O'Connell, make the stats look worse than they really are. Doru had a nice game. King Doru moved the chains a few times, had a very nice screen game. The screen he caught that went about 40 yards on that last drive Purdue had, that was huge. Xander Horvath back again, had a fumble at the first drive of the second half. That one was bad. That momentum swing could have been really dangerous. But as a whole in this game, the offense felt like vintage Jeff Brom. What we saw in 2017, what we saw in 2018, that double reverse touchdown to Jackson Anthrop was awesome. It was a good play. It was well executed. It was perfect. I mean, there is nothing you can ask more than that. And I'm not saying Purdue needs to hit double reverse screen passes with the whole offensive line outside the hash marks in every game, but that stuff is nice. It's fun. It works. It's just fun to see that stuff, and that's why Purdue hired Jeff Brom. He never took his foot off the pedal in this game. This was a great, great performance by Jeff Brom. Purdue hasn't scored 40 against a credible opponent since 2019. They got to 40 in the overtime loss to Indiana that took a couple overtimes to get there, and against Maryland and I think Vanderbilt as well that year, they got to 40. So Purdue hasn't done that in a while. Now they did it. They hit that 40-point mark. That's awesome. That's why you paid Jeff Brom the $5.5 million a year he makes. That's why you're going to continue to pay Jeff Brom that as we move forward here. The defense was fine. I didn't think it was great, but it was good enough. You did what you could with Kenneth Walker III. The guy's legit. 146 yards and a touchdown. So what? Purdue didn't let him break that game open the way that Michigan did last week. His touchdown runs against Michigan were all massive plays. In this game, his one was a 4th-and-1 play from inside the 20. So be it. I mean, that's not the backbreaker that a 60-yard play is, and that's what your real concern was that Walker was going to break through on a 70-yard touchdown run. That didn't happen. I will say Peyton Thorne was a little better than I thought he would be, with the exception of that interception to Dedrick Mackey, which was on a 4th down play. You got to take a shot. He was really solid. I thought Thorne had a nice game. He really targeted Jamari Brown all day long. That kind of surprised me, but, Brown held his own. He had a fine game, got beat a couple times, but, that's to be expected. It was interesting to see Malik Carr on the other side of the field. He had the best game of his career. He had, and that's not saying much, he hasn't done a whole lot, but he had a 28-yard reception, and then right after that, he caught a 2-point conversion. Got asked, does Carr feel dumb for leaving Purdue now? Probably not. I don't know. I mean, you never know what these kids want. You never know. Malik Carr's from Michigan. He's going back home. He thinks he's going to play basketball there. I have my serious doubts, but I guess you never know. But so be it. Purdue's doing fine without him. And if he can get some snaps at Michigan State, good for him. Purdue did get fortunate in this game, though, to not have to deal with Jalen Naylor. In my opinion, he's Michigan State's best receiver. He's right there with Jaden Reed. But obviously that helped Purdue. Anytime you have one less big, explosive receiver to deal with, that's going to help you big time. Mitchell Finneran bounced back nicely, and this is how it needed to happen. Purdue didn't ask him to do anything crazy. Not that they did against Nebraska. Those were makeable field goals, but it goes 4 for 4. All of them were inside 30 yards. Don't always love that you had to settle for 4 field goals that were inside 30 yards, but regardless, very good for him to see the ball go through the uprights. You're going to need him. There are still 3 big games left. You're going to need him to be on the money as we move forward. So looking at this game as we like to do, zoomed out picture, high atop Ross-Ade Stadium on Saturday night. You saw the field flooded with people in black and gold. Very, very great scene. Jeff Brom benefited from this win big time. As I talked about on last week's show, Jeff Brom needed something big to happen at home. A lot of his big wins had come on the road, and there's nothing wrong with that. Winning at Iowa, winning at Nebraska, that was great. Those were huge wins for Purdue. You love seeing that. But sometimes you need a home win here and there to energize the fan base, and that's what you got here. You got to win at home. That was on national TV. That helps even more. You know, the national ABC audience, which was going up against a Texas A&M Auburn game that had 0 offensive touchdowns. This was a lot more fun to watch. You have that going on your side. You had some big recruits at that game. Joe Strickland, Nick Carraway, 2 of your best commits for the 2022 class were there on campus. That was huge. And you saw everything that Jeff Brom's offense is. It was fun. The offense put up 40 points. They had big plays. They threw it all over the yard. That was huge. Those are the momentum games that you hired Jeff Brom for to keep Purdue's name out there. You know, this is never going to be a national championship contending program. And if that's your expectations, I don't know what to tell you. But that was an awesome win. And that's the type of stuff that you want to see as Purdue tries to make seasons like this, where an 8-4 record seems pretty attainable. That's what you want this to be like more years than not. I had a question on Twitter that I wanted to answer in this part of the show rather than waiting till the end because it fits in our perspective thing well. Where does this win rank in the Brom era? And then going past that, I think it's tough to compare because college football is so different now than it was. But in the Brom era, I think in that 2017 season, he came in. I'll always think that Ohio win on the Friday night, his first home game, his first win, was massive. Purdue was fun in that game. Purdue put up a lot of points. I think they won 44-21. They dominated Ohio from the start. That was huge. I thought that was just a fun way to get things going. Ross-Ade was pretty full that night, and there was enthusiasm right away. They went to Iowa and took down a Hawkeye team that was pretty good. No one had Purdue winning that game. That got them to their 5th win. And then they beat Indiana at home to go to a bowl game in front of the biggest crowd Ross-Ade had seen in years. That was rocking. That was awesome. Those 3 were probably all bigger than this. 2018, certainly Ohio State is his biggest win to this point. That was just out of this world. Anytime, and if you were on the field Saturday night, you could feel it. If you were on the field for both Ohio State and Michigan State, it was apples to oranges. Nothing compares to that Ohio State win. But in that year, the Iowa win was pretty big too. Purdue won that game, a bit of a shootout at Ross-Ade. That was fun as well. This is bigger than Iowa was this year. This is up there. I mean, this is probably a top 5 win in the Brom era. And coming at home is just so big. The enthusiasm that comes from that is huge. And then he asked kind of about the perspective of Purdue in the Big Ten and nationally. And, we'll talk about this a lot during the offseason. This is stuff I love to talk about, big picture stuff, as we, especially as we get into May and June, once I don't have basketball to talk about. But the West is just a big cluster. The programs are decent, but they're not great. Wisconsin is strong, but I don't think they're what they were under Bielema or Alvarez. I think they're a step below that. Iowa, they're fine. They're not great, but they're rock solid. Minnesota just gave PJ Fleck 7 more years. They're solid. Northwestern is, for what they are, this is as good as they're going to get. Fitz is a great coach there. If they were to ever lose him, they'd fall back to the cellar. But they're doing good things there. Nebraska just today announced that Frost is going to come back next year, and Illinois is fine. Year 1 of Bielema's going as well as it could for them. So, Purdue's in there. They're in the mix. They're looking to get into that top 3, solidify themselves in the top 4 of the West. Instead, right now, it kind of felt like everyone, and then Illinois coming into this year. Illinois has been pretty good relative to expectations, as is Purdue. Northwestern and Nebraska, way under expectations. But nationally, it's harder to tell. I mean, anyone with perspective knows that Braum has been a very good hire. Purdue is far more nationally relevant than it has been since probably at least that 07 season. You know, maybe even if you want, you could probably go back to Kyle Orton. Maybe 2006 with Curtis Painter was a decent year, but Purdue's as relevant as they've been since, the mid-Joe Tiller years. So nationally, I think the perspective is pretty good, and there's quite a bit of excitement around Purdue football right now, and that's all you can ask for. Your over-under win total was 5. You've already hit the over. You're bowl eligible. You're going to be favored in your last 2 games. That's huge. If these games play out as Vegas says they will, you're 8-4. That would be a great season. A legitimate, strong bowl game is in line here, and that's exciting. That is exactly what you needed for this year. You just have to go finish it. Now, you go to Ohio State this week. It's a 3:30 kick on ABC. Ohio State, 19-point favorites. The over-under is like 64, I think. And I think that kind of, if it didn't kind of open your eyes a little bit when you saw that line, it should have. Because folks on Twitter were saying, Purdue's going to be 10 to 14-point dogs. No. Vegas says 3 touchdowns almost. That's the reality. If you're expecting a win here, listen to the next 5 to 10 minutes with caution, because I don't want to ruin your hopes, but I shoot it to you straight. Buckeyes, 8-1, 6-0 in the Big Ten. Their loss came week 2 at home against Oregon. They've been up and down since then. This is not a elite Ohio State team compared to what they've been. They certainly are a top 10 team in the country. They were very, very strong in wins against Rutgers, Maryland, and Indiana. Yes, those 3 teams aren't very good. They struggled a little bit in their last 2 wins. They beat Penn State in the horseshoe at night, kind of ugly. And then last week, they mucked it up at Nebraska pretty good. Didn't pull away by much there either. So they haven't covered their last 2 games. But the offense has all the weapons in the world to be explosive. C.J. Stroud, in his first year as the starting quarterback, has been rock solid. 67% completion, 324 yards a game, and he's got a 25-5 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, this is where you realize how different Ohio State is than Purdue, and we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, but the expectations now are what Justin Fields did the last 2 years. Stroud's not that. Justin Fields was, a Heisman contender, but Stroud's been really, really good. There's no doubt about it. They've got a freshman running back in Travion Henderson. He was the top running back recruit in this year's class. He's a true freshman, and they're running for 100 yards a game, over 7 yards a carry, and has 12 touchdowns in 9 games already. This is insane. And Henderson didn't play last year in his senior year of high school. His season got canceled. Their receiver room is loaded. Jackson Smith and Jigba just had 250 yards last week. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, they were both preseason all Big Ten, preseason All-American caliber receivers. Those 3, Smith and Jigba, Olave, Wilson, 20 receiving touchdowns between those 3. They are all easily in the top 10 receivers in the Big Ten, and I think you could take those 3, throw on David Bell and Jahan Dotson from Penn State, and you probably have your top 5. I mean, that Ohio State receiver room is terrifying, and they've got 5 stars like Marvin Harrison's kid sitting there who never plays. If you listen to Buckeye fans, they're going to complain about their offensive line and defense. Yeah, I mean, if you play against Georgia, that might be what holds you back from winning. But In the Big Ten, it's fine. I mean, they're doing just fine. They want to be a little more consistent on the ground, I guess. You know, they want to force more turnovers, but this is a really good Ohio State team. I think the line's pretty accurate at 19 because this is where you really see what reality is in the Big Ten. If you look at the team talent composite on 24/7 Sports, if you haven't checked that out, it's a pretty good way to evaluate how much pure talent is on every team. Ohio State is leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else in the Big Ten. Yes, Penn State and Michigan have a lot of 4-star talent. They have some 5-star talent. Ohio State's on a different stratosphere of what talent they have in that room. It's just a massive gap between them and everyone else in the conference. This is why they haven't lost a Big Ten game since they were at Ross-Ade in 2018. I mean, it's out of this world. They are that much better on paper than everyone else, and I think you're going to see it Saturday. 3 keys, and maybe this is pessimistic of me coming off a big win, but stay healthy. Look, you're 19-point dogs. This isn't a game that I think you're going to win. I think you could play really well in this game and still lose by 14 to 21 points. Don't let this game cost you Northwestern or Indiana. Come out of it healthy. Of course, you need, number 2, you need Aiden O'Connell to air it out. To have a chance, you're going to need another massive day from Aiden O'Connell. You know, when Purdue pulled off that upset in 2018, David Blau had a massive day. DJ Knox ran the ball very well. Rondale Moore, put himself on yet another national stage well. I mean, that's what you need in this game. You need players to have huge days, and it starts with Aiden O'Connell. If he doesn't have a big day, Purdue doesn't have a chance. And number 3, put some pressure on Ohio State. They haven't been challenged that often outside of the Oregon game. And they saw a little bit of pressure against Penn State and Nebraska, but if you can get a lead on them, you never know. Maybe Stroud makes a mistake. He threw 2 picks last week. You never know. If you put some pressure on them, anything can happen. But if you don't, if Ohio State gets out to a 14-0 lead, I think this one's probably over. Now, my prediction, I'm going 42-21. And look, it's a really bad spot for Purdue. You're coming off of a massive win. You're coming off of a field-storming win. I'm recording this Monday night, 24 hours, a little bit after that from now. We'll see if the playoff committee has Purdue in the top 25. I think they probably will. You will be favored in your last 2. You're going to be favored against Northwestern and Indiana. So, in reality, this is a classic dead spot here. It's Ohio State. I don't think Purdue's going to come out flat, but you just got to get through this. And Ohio State is coming off of 2 straight subpar performances given their expectations. So they're going to be shot out of a cannon. They're going to be ready to go. They're in front of their home fans. It's 3:30 on ABC. It's a big game for them. So you just got to get through this. No one thinks Purdue's going to win. Vegas is usually, they know something that the public doesn't. I could see Purdue really struggling here. If they come in and hang in there and come out of this healthy, it's about all you can ask for. But I'll be interested to see what Purdue does with injuries this week because, if Payne Durham's not going to be 100%, I think it's foolish to put him out there. If Kydron Jenkins isn't going to be 100%, he played less than half the snaps at Leo on Saturday. If he's not going to be 100%, it might be foolish to put him out there. That's kind of where I'm leaning here, is that this game's going to be an uphill battle. It's not worth costing you 2 games down the stretch. And I had a question about how much better Purdue needs to play than they did last week to need this. I mean, it's going to take your best effort of the season. I don't think you can win this game by only running the ball for, 50 or 60 yards that Purdue did. I just think you're going to have to do more than that. I don't think you're going to be able to throw for 536 again. And on defense, you got to tackle better. Brown wasn't thrilled with the tackling, and the safeties have had some struggles there this year. Purdue would have to play the cleanest and best game they have all year to have a chance late in the game in this one. On to basketball real quick. We spend about, maybe 10 minutes here on it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong when I'm sitting here at the 45-minute mark still talking basketball. Purdue beat UIndy on Thursday, 86-64 in the exhibition game. Plenty of things Purdue can improve on, and that's okay. There were plenty of overreactions out there. Matt Painter was not happy with his team's effort, really ripped him in the post-game presser. Defensive issues early on. I know UIndy shot 54% in the first half, and they had a lot of open looks from three. That's a problem. Purdue's still working out those defensive rotations. That was a problem last year, so that's something to keep an eye on early on this year. They had a few issues on offense. The free throw shooting was horrible. 14 of 23 isn't going to win you games. You're 2 weeks away now from going to Mohegan Sun to play a couple of top 20 teams in North Carolina and then either Tennessee or Villanova. You can't go 14 of 23 at the line in those games. Purdue didn't always have the best decision-making. I think there were just some shots that you take in an exhibition that you might not in a real game, which it's fine, but I'm trying not to read too much into one game because it is very easy to see a team for the first time. You've got a million takes, but then the next game, someone doesn't play as well. Someone plays a lot better the next game. It's too early to rush to judgment, but when Matt Painter is questioning the effort and energy from his team, that's not good. Now, they've got a couple chances here to improve on that this week. Tuesday, this podcast will drop Tuesday morning, so maybe you're listening to this on your way to Mackey, on your commute on the day of. Bellarmine comes into town. They are number 175 in preseason KenPom. They've got 8 Indiana kids on the roster. I was pretty surprised when I saw that, but, if you don't know, Bellarmine's in Louisville, so you're not too far away. They'll be motivated. 8 Indiana kids, they like to come in here, and they'll have family at the game. That's always a factor. They'll be ready to go. Bellarmine, the Knights were 14-8 last year, and they competed with Notre Dame well. I think they only lost by 11 points up there at Purcell Pavilion. They played in the CBI. I know Purdue fans have some lovely memories from the CBI. Thank you, DJ Bird and Eric Peck and some of the guys from that team. But, it's a Purdue season opener. They are 17-1, something like that in season openers under Painter. Now, 15-1, 16-1, I don't even know how, something like that. Only loss was to Bucknell back in 2012, so you hope to keep that going. You certainly, that would put a damper on the start of season here. Then Indiana State comes in on Friday. That's an 8:30 tip on BTN. They're 187 in preseason KenPom. And they're bizarre. 15-10 last year, 11-7 in the Missouri Valley. I follow the Valley a little bit. I have a lot of family that went to Valparaiso, so I follow the Valley a lot. 11-7 last year in the Valley, and they still fired head coach Greg Lansing. They replaced him with Josh Schertz. He's a D2 lifer from a D2 school down in Kentucky. He's been there like 15 years. Purdue played ISU last year and won 80-68. That was the game when Travion Williams was benched and had 30 off the bench. And that was when Aaron Wheeler was benched and never returned to the lineup. Cooper Neese, the 6'4 guard out of Cloverdale, Indiana All-Star, had 22 for the Sycamores last year, but they lost a ton. The guys who left the program, Jake LaRavia, that's one that Purdue recruited a bit. They lost almost everyone last year when Lansing was fired. And then I just saw today that Tyreek Key started some for him last year, came off the bench some, but he's out for the year with a shoulder injury. So when you look at these games, Purdue should handle both fairly easily. I know Purdue's a 21.5 point favorite over Bellarmine, and if Ken Palm's right, they'll be bigger than that against ISU. We'll see what they do. If they get a test or two, if it's a 10-point game in the second half, we'll see how Purdue responds to that. If it gets cut to a single-digit point game in the second half, Twitter will freak out. These should be easy wins. I firmly expect that, and I'd like to see Purdue really run away with this. But a few areas to watch. Number one, point guard. Isaiah Thompson started the exhibition game, and according to Mike Carmen of the Journal and Courier, Isaiah Thompson will start in the season opener. Long term, I think this is Eric Hunter's spot. You see rumors that this is a disciplinary thing with Hunter coming off the bench. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know much there. What do Ethan Morton's minutes look like, though? That's what I want to know. I thought he looked nice in the exhibition opener. I thought he looked a lot more comfortable than he did in his freshman season. Obviously, there were a lot of factors involved there. But the point guard spot with minute distribution will be interesting. The same thing at the 4 spot. I was very impressed with Caleb First in the exhibition game. Trey Kaufman-Renn looked a little bit more like a true freshman, and that's very okay. It's a big jump from Southern Indiana to the Big Ten. But for Caleb First, I want to see if he continues to look as comfortable as he did in the exhibition opener. If he does, I'm going to feel really good about my prediction that First will be all freshman team in the Big Ten this year. I'm rooting for that a little bit now. I was pretty impressed with what I saw from the Mr. Basketball. And then competitiveness. These are teams you want to see Purdue blow out. And I know this isn't a Chicago State game. These teams are respectable mid-majors in the sense that they're in the top 200 in Ken Pom. That's not bad. They're pretty decent mid-majors. Both had a winning record last year. That tells you quite a bit. But, Purdue, you'd like to see them blow these teams out because this is someone you could face in the first round of the NCAA tournament. You want to see them run away with one of these things. And maybe not both. You may not get both, but maybe in one of these, you get the walk-ons in, you put up 90 points, maybe you flirt with 100. Show everyone that you're better than what you showed against UIndy because Matt Painter's going to expect it. He challenged his team to be better. Now we see how they respond as the season gets underway. Seeing Mackey Arena back full was awesome. I can't wait to be there tomorrow night. I'll be there all season. It's going to be a blast. It is going to be a great year there. Your questions. We're going to answer some of them here. Basketball one first, and I think we have all football after that. Do I still think Edey starts to begin the season? Well, that's been answered. Mike Carmen tweeted out that the exhibition lineup will be the same in the season opener. I'm not sure what the rationale is there. Maybe Zach Edey has been better than Travion Williams all offseason. I don't know. I'm not in those practices. Only Matt Painter is, and you will not find a bigger Matt Painter fan than me. I have all the confidence in the world in him. Now, I do know that Matt Painter has always liked to find ways to motivate Travion Williams. We saw it last year when he got benched. We saw it his freshman year when Williams wasn't at the weight he needed to be, and he barely played early on until kind of had to when Evan Boudreaux was struggling and got hurt. But I thought Williams was really good against UIndy. He took a 3-point attempt that he should never be taking. But, that's just kind of Travion Williams. That's who he is. Both guys were really good. Thought Edey was maybe a little loose with the ball. Got to keep that ball up when you're 7-4. There's no point in bringing it down. I think eventually Williams is going to be the starter. But I guess you never know. I'm not the coach. I think Williams will eventually be the starter, but maybe Edey does start for a little bit. Maybe he starts all year. Who knows? Football time. Do I think Purdue should go back to the 03-04 offense of throwing it 60 times a game if they struggle to run it like they did against Wisconsin? No. I don't think you can completely abandon the run game in modern-day football. Brom kind of acknowledges that. You heard it during the Nebraska game when in his pregame meeting with the ABC guys, or the ESPN2 guys, I guess, he had told them over and over that he abandoned the run too quick against Wisconsin. And if you go back to my offseason episodes, that's a criticism I had of Jeff Brom. He's gotten better at that this year. I love that. He's coming into his own some. He's still learning. You always like to see that. But comparing it to 03-04, the game has just changed so much since then. Purdue's basketball on grass offense that Joe Tiller brought here, that we were still the only school doing that in the Big Ten at that point. No one else was throwing the ball like Purdue was then. Now, Ohio State airs it out all over the place. Maryland throws it a boatload with Tagovailoa. Penn State has the tendency to throw it a good amount with Clifford. I mean, Purdue's still the most pass-heavy team in the Big Ten, but teams are more used to defending that than they were back then. So throwing it the way Purdue used to in those Tiller years with him and Jim Chaney and, the subsequent offensive staff after Chaney left, it's just not the same as it used to be there. Different sport, but yeah, Purdue throws it a boatload, and they're always going to under Jeff Brom. And piggybacking off that, is the aerial attack sustainable, or do you need to find a way to run the ball to win games down the stretch here? I've liked Brom's play calling a lot. In all fairness, I can't say I've watched much Northwestern this year. I know they're not great, but at Ohio State, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to find a way to do everything at Ohio State to win. But, down the stretch, I think Purdue's the better team in its last two games. So, in theory, you should be able to kind of have your way. You should be able to play the game your way and win those. Now, the one thing I'll add here is that it's Big Ten weather season. You're going to start getting the rain. You're going to get some snow maybe. It'll be windy. I mean, it's November. It's going to be cold. So it's not prime drop back and throw it 50 times weather, but Purdue's used to it. Brom's won games in that weather before. I'm sure we'll see it again here. Did Xander Horvath look a little banged up? Probably. When I rewatched the game, I didn't notice a ton, but he's less than 2 months removed from breaking a bone in his leg. There's no way he's 100% at this point. As I said last week, I give him all the credit in the world for being out there. That takes some guts. That takes some courage. I really respect that, and I'm glad he's getting to finish out his senior year. What aspect of the team has surprised me the most to this point? The defense, absolutely. Last year's defense was just so bad. If you remember back to the Minnesota game when Purdue couldn't win a shootout because they literally couldn't get a stop. Against Rutgers, Rutgers didn't even try to throw the ball, and they were able to get 5-6 yards on the ground on every play. Nebraska game, Purdue tried to get a stop late, and then Dedrick Mackey got a 15-yard penalty. The penalties, there's been so fewer penalties this year on Purdue's D. They've greatly improved there. They are better in every aspect on defense. Brad Lambert has been a godsend. His assistants have been excellent. Everything about this defensive turnaround is stellar, and that's the story of Purdue's season so far. And then finally, my guy Zach asked, are we going to the Rose Bowl? No, that won't happen. Even if Purdue were to win out with a win over Ohio State, they're probably not going to the Rose Bowl. But some good bowls are definitely in play. You look at the projections. You see the Outback Bowl. You see the Vegas Bowl. I saw the Music City Bowl. I really don't want to go to the Pinstripe Bowl. I'm not going to New York right around New Year's. I'm not that wealthy yet in life. But, you're still looking at a good bowl game, and you are exceeding any expectation you could have had coming into this season. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for spending some time with me. I'll be busy this week. I'll be in Mackey on Tuesday and Friday, and then I will be in the Horseshoe on Saturday. So follow me along. Boilers Beyond on Twitter. We got notes coming from every game. Going to be tweeting observations and thoughts. Subscribe to the show. We're getting into a busy part of the year. Shows coming at you every week. If there's ever a need for 2 shows in a week, well, I'll do it. So subscribe. Tell some friends. We're going to be here all season long. Let's grow this thing. Let's have a lot of people in here, whether it's from your couch or the bleachers. Enjoy the games, and I'll talk to you next week.